How confident should Packers fans be in Malik Willis as the guy who will be stepping in under center, according to that Jay Glazer report, in Jordan Love's absence?
Well, Jen, this is a guy who has started 3 games, and it was 2 years ago. He has 222 career snaps in regular season games. Now that is, let me do the math here, 222 minus Sean Clifford's 13 snaps is what? That's 208 more snaps or 7. I'm terrible at math. However many more snaps he has than Sean Clifford's 13, which is their only other option, really. So I don't think should be confident at all, and that's not a knock on Malik Willis necessarily, but let's go back to the times when the Packers starting quarterback has missed games before, and not necessarily under Matt LaFleur. There's only one of those, and it's the Jordan Love start in Kansas City. But previous to that, the 2 collarbone years, they were 5-10-1 in games without Aaron Rodgers in those 2 seasons, and what's 5 out of 16 for a winning percentage? It's not great.
Rob, why the big discrepancy between Musgrave and Kraft playing time?
I'll tell you this, Chewy. That is reflective of what we saw in training camp, because last year, remember how we would rave about Musgrave, and he's getting 3, 4, 5, 6 targets every day in training camp practice. He didn't get many, and when Tucker Kraft came back from that pectoral injury, and I specifically remember the joint practice against the Ravens. I mean, he was outstanding. He had several catches in the move the ball period against the Ravens, and I even said on I can't remember. I think it was Gabe or was it KBN show that I said I thought Tucker Kraft. No, it was my bold prediction on Wildy and Tausch's Boldathon that Tucker Kraft would catch 50 passes this year.
What grade would you give the defense from Friday night?
I'd give it a C+, and maybe that's better than most people would. And here's why, Gabe. That first of all, it's a new defense, right? Let's not make any rash judgments after one game. But second of all, one of the biggest things that I thought the defense lacked last year under Joe Barry was quite simply takeaways. I mean, they had 7 interceptions for the entire season last year. Right away, Xavier McKinney gets one. Jair gets one later. It was a bit of a kind of a goofy play. They had the fumble recovery. I mean, takeaways are more important to me than almost anything else in defensive football. And look, he preached aggressiveness, and there was a great stat from ESPN Stats and Info that I believe Hafley blitzed 9 times, and Jalen Hurts picked it apart for 91 yards and a touchdown. I think it was 6 out of 8 passing, and then had 1 scramble against the blitz. I mean, so look, all right, the blitz didn't work, but it doesn't mean it's not going to ever work. And I do like the aggressive style.
Rob Demovsky hanging out with Jen, Gabe, and Chewy. There's been a lot of talk over the last 24 hours about them going out and getting someone else, Ryan Tannehill. I know where we've decided Malik is the guy they are going with. Why the conflicting reports out there? Why they talked to Ryan Tannehill? No, they didn't talk to anybody. Gabe's position was they were trying to protect Malik Willis's confidence. Do you buy that?
Yeah. I certainly think it's possible. I also think it's possible that they reached out to Ryan Tannehill in the past, possibly over the summer, and the timeline of when they reached out may be misreported there. But I'll tell you this. Ryan Tannehill made $195 million in his career. He's not coming back for a couple of $1 million to play 3 or 4 games. That's just it is, whether they reached out to him or didn't, Ryan Tannehill is not coming back under those circumstances. And that's I believe that. I've heard that. I just don't think that's happening. Whether they did reach out to him or didn't, he's not playing for that. And it's funny because everybody's like, why don't they just reach out to this guy? Why don't they just sign this guy? Maybe those guys don't want to do it, and I think that's the case in Ryan Tannehill.
Rob, how'd the O-line play?
Chewy, I didn't think they played great, to be honest, especially early. Early on they couldn't run the ball very well. I don't know about the rotation. I understand why they're doing it with Sean Ryan and Jordan Morgan, but I didn't think it was good enough, especially in the run game.
So if the offensive line isn't playing great, what do you think the offensive game plan needs to be for them to have the most success in these 3, 4, maybe even more games that Jordan Love is going to be out?
Well, first of all, Gabe, what's Indianapolis going to do, right? They're going to load the box, aren't they? And they're going to say, you know what? The only threat that we see there is Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson, who, by the way, Emmanuel Wilson had a nice little game for himself, I thought.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to get some quick hitting play action stuff. It's the only way that they're going to be able to get Indianapolis to respect Malik Willis. And look, I would suspect that we don't see Malik Willis throw the ball down the field a whole lot, especially early. But it would not surprise me if we got back to more of the quick West Coast stuff. I don't know if there's going to be as much traditional motion that Matt LaFleur would like to use. But I think they got to find a way to get the ball out of his hands quickly and make Indianapolis respect it at least a little bit. Because if they're going to have success, they've got to be able to run the ball. They've got to be able to shorten the game. They've got to win games like what was the Patriots score yesterday? Like
16 to
10. Yeah, they're going to have to win a game or two that way. And I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong. Let's just say he's out. Let's say he misses the short end and it's only 3 games, so 4 games total. I really think if they win one of them, they're fine. Like, and 1 and 3 isn't ideal, but win one. I mean, like, how long did it take in 13 for them to win a game? It went from Seneca Wallace to Scott Tolzien to finally Matt Flynn, and I realize Matt Flynn's not coming back, but I think if they
have we called him?
Hey, Tom Clements would probably like to have him since Tom was the guy back then, but I just think that if they can win a game. Ideally, it would be one of the ones here, the next couple, and not go 0-3 and win one. But if they can win one, if they're 1-3, or if he's going to miss more than that time, 2-4, something like that, I don't think it's a total disaster. We obviously saw him get to 9 wins at 2-5, so you certainly can get to 10 wins at 2-3 or 1-3.
Rob Demovsky hanging out with Jen, Gabe, and Chewy, as he will each and every Monday during the NFL season. One of the points that Gabe made earlier in this show was that with Jordan Love being out, you need the other units to step up. You need the defense to play better than they played week 1. You need special teams to play better than week 1, which brings me to Braden Narveson. How should people feel about his performance in Brazil?
I thought they did by chance, they did a good job easing him into it with some short field goals. Not that was the plan, but I think it's a little troubling that he missed the one off the right upright. I mean, that's you would have liked to have him get through the first game where he had a perfect game on however many opportunities, and you could sort of take the pressure off. Now the pressure is just mounting. I mean, it's every kick is even more intensified than ever before. So I think they've got to get that figured out. And I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but from a special teams perspective, I can't wait till we talk to Rich Bisaccia on Thursday and ask him what he told Keyshawn Nixon on that last kickoff return. Was he supposed to bring it out from 8 yards deep? Was he not? Valuable seconds. 8 seconds ripped off the clock, I believe, there. When I went back, I think it went from 30 to 22 or something like that. That I don't understand that. And if that was coached, I think that's a problem. If Keyshawn Nixon was coached differently and didn't listen, that's a problem. So I think there's some issues there.
And then, Rob, what's up with Wicks? I mean, is he parallel to Musgrave now? Just nothing special in camp, may have plateaued. He was targeted. He had one for sure drop. What's going on there?
I graded it 2, Chewy. I mean, for sure,
okay.
2 drops.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to go back. I haven't not looked at yet at what the ESPN stats and info people have had, but I go back to the old Joe Philbin standard. If you can touch it, you can catch it.
Yeah.
I thought those were both drops. Obviously, the field conditions played into it. I'm not ready to write off Dontavion Wicks at all. In fact, I think he's going to be still a big part of this offense. But look, I mean, he was the what was he, a 5th-round pick, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like he was, he impressed some people last year, but it's not like he's going to be flawless, right away again this year. He's still very much a player in development who, probably took a hit of confidence. And there was the one throw to him. I don't think it was a drop, but it was later in the game. And, it just was a little off the mark. And he, smacked the turf there a little bit. So you can see some frustration on his part that they're going to have to rein in a little bit. And, it might be tough for these receivers the next couple of weeks because, there may not be huge yardage opportunities, but when they get them, they're going to have to catch them. You cannot have, I think Dobbs had a drop too, right? I think you cannot have, you can't have 1 or 2 drops, let alone 3. I had 3 written down, 2 for Wicks and 1 for Dobbs. So, you can't have 3 drops when you're playing a backup quarterback. You've got to catch everything that guy puts in your vicinity because he's going to need all the help he can get.
You brought up the field conditions, Rob, and I know it was a big talking point for fans on social media during the game. It was a big talking point everywhere because, I saw some pictures after the game where, one of the end zones looked like a beat-up driving range. It was just bad, just chunks of turf missing out of the end zone. The NFL doesn't care, right?
Maybe after you were laying the sod over some wedges. My gimmicks are small. Yeah, look, they don't care. And, I put not all of it on the league, but, certainly there's the issue of they didn't get into the stadium until the day of the game, right? Like, had they had a walkthrough type practice there the day before, maybe you had a better feel, but warm-up should have given you a better feel. And look, not to bring up an old Mike McCarthyism, but why weren't they wearing the 7 stud? Right?
Yeah.
Get the right cleats. Like that's first of all. And I will say they must have made some adjustments because in the second half it didn't seem quite as bad. I also wonder how much of it's just the weather conditions. I wasn't there, thankfully. It's the first road game I've missed in a long, long time, and I wasn't overly sad about it. But the weather, there could have been. It was late at night. The dew on the grass. Gabe, I know after like a tough round of golf and you're laying in bed at 10 o'clock at night and you can't sleep because you missed that wedge way right you go out to the backyard and just take some swings in the middle of the night and the grass is kind of dewy. Well, that game started at 9:15 local time in Brazil. I don't know. I'm not a Brazilian climate expert, but I wonder if there was a little bit of something there.
All right, last thing for you, Rob, before we let you go. The preseason, I'm guessing, isn't changing, and yet it does feel like a lot of teams were sloppy. A lot of teams were, not their best selves week 1, and the only thing I can think is because you're not getting the reps you need in the preseason to shake that rust off. What is the league going to do? Do they care that week 1 looked like it looked?
You know what they're going to do, Jen? They're going to take away another preseason game. They're going to add a regular season game, and the season's going to start Labor Day weekend. And the Super Bowl is going to end on Selection Sunday or whatever in mid-March. No, I joked with those guys on Wednesday that if the league had its druthers, they'd start Memorial Day weekend. They'd start Labor Day weekend and they'd end the season Memorial Day weekend and they'd play 30 games and there'd be a 6-week off season and then training camp would start after 4th of July or whatever.